Hi everyone, it's Rachel back with the Shades of Orange. Today I want to do a book haul of all the adult science fiction and fantasy that I have received recently. This is a combination of books that I received from various publishers, as well as books that I bought myself using store credit at a local used bookstore. I have some great books to talk about. As usual with my hauls, I tend to read books as soon as I get them, so I actually have already read and reviewed most of the books I'm going to be talking about here, so I will let you know which books have reviews. And if you're interested in them, you can go check out the individual review, which is really nice because I know a lot of people don't necessarily watch those videos, but if a book sounds interesting here and you want to know more about it, you can go check out the video. All that being said, let's get started. First, let's talk science fiction. And I received, and I've already read, Velocity Weapon by Megan E. O'Keefe. This is one I got from Orbit Books and Hachette. And this is a space opera. It's the first book in a series that involves a woman who goes down during a battle and wakes up over 100 years later. And the story is told from multiple perspectives, and I'm not going to say how they get tied together. And this book also involves an intelligent ship, which is one of my favorite tropes in science fiction. I definitely enjoyed this one. I'm always looking for a new space opera to fill the void that The Expanse is going to leave with me soon. This one wasn't honestly as good as The Expanse, but it still was a lot of fun, and I'm definitely curious to check out where the series is going to go from here. Next, also from Orbit Books, I received a copy of The Last Astronaut by David Wellington. This is one that I also have read and reviewed on my channel. This is a science fiction thriller that is set in a near future, and in that future, NASA has basically been shut down due to an accident that lost the PR and public support of the program. However, something is coming towards Earth, so they are forced to resurrect the program, and this story follows a female astronaut who leads that mission to find out what is coming towards Earth or who is coming towards Earth. This is definitely a thriller, and it does have threads of horror because if you recognize the name, David Wellington is actually perhaps more well known for writing horror, which is one of the reasons I wanted to check this out. Again, if you want to hear more of my thoughts, I recommend checking out my individual review, but it was definitely a lot of fun and very much a quick read. Along a similar line, I also received a book called Vessel by Lisa Nichols. This is another one I have read and reviewed. This is set in a near future where a wormhole is found in our solar system, and a group of astronauts is set off to go find out what is on the other side. The story starts with the main astronaut coming back without her memory and without the rest of her crew, and the story is finding out what happened while she was away. This book is pitched as being a science fiction thriller, but honestly it read more like a contemporary because while there is the mystery of what happened on the other side of the wormhole, most of the story actually involves her reconnecting with her family and discussing the choices that she made, choosing to put her career over top of her family because she was actually a young mother when she went away, and so it deals a lot with those family dynamics. Not my personal favorite, only because I'm not a big contemporary reader, but if you're interested to hear more about it, again, go check out my review. I also received a copy of Salvaged by Madeleine Roux. This is a science fiction horror book that was on my most anticipated releases for 2019, so I was very excited when Penguin Random House Canada agreed to send me a copy. I have already read it. I basically read it as soon as it arrived in the post, and at this point you probably have not seen my review yet, so wait for that. I should have it coming in a couple weeks, but I'll let you know that while it was an anticipated release, I didn't like it quite as much as I thought, so I went in with perhaps too high of expectations. It definitely has some creepy moments to it, but it just wasn't exactly what I was hoping for. Again, wait for my review. I'll explain a lot more in that video. Now I want to talk about two science fiction books that I purchased for myself, one of them being The Old Man's War by John Scalzi. This is a space opera that is set in a future where people, when they reach a certain age, are able to enlist in the military, and in doing so, they are able to take the minds of someone who has lived a full life and put it into a younger body so that they can fight in a war. I have already read this. I read it before I purchased it, and I just enjoyed the book enough that I did want to get my own copy. I think this is a really accessible place to start with science fiction, especially if you want to try a space opera that's not huge and lengthy, and I definitely recommend this one. Scalzi is just a really fun writer. He writes with a lot of humor, and I definitely recommend this one. It is one I want to reread, which is why I want to get myself my own copy. As well, I also purchased a copy of Starfish by Peter Watts. This is one that I have not yet read, but really want to. The premise sounds fantastic. This is a science fiction horror book, and if you know me, you know that I love when the two genres cross over. And the premise sounds really cool. It's about a corporation that sets up a facility at the bottom of the ocean, and they get a group of people to man the station. However, in order to live there, they need to be bioengineered. And it sounds like the people that are chosen for this mission are not necessarily the best of society, but rather a lot of lowlifes and people with their own physical or mental struggles and are possibly going crazy down below. It just sounds great. It's supposed to be very hard science fiction, which is something I've been craving getting into. I really want to push myself to read more hard sci-fi, and I definitely want to check this one out. I've heard great things about this one as well as the other book, Blindsight, but I think this one's a little more accessible, so I do want to start here. Now to switch over to fantasy, I received a copy of a duology, and that is the Traitor God as well as the God of Broken Things, both by Johnston. This is one that I received from Angry Robot Books, and this is a gritty fantasy set in a secondary world. It follows this protagonist that is cast away from this place, but he ends up going back to his hometown when his friend is murdered. So it's a fantasy story with a strong thread of a mystery, and certainly it gets a bit epic at times. I wouldn't call this grimdark, but it definitely is gritty. It deals with the brutal side of societies, and I very much enjoyed it. It is nice to read a fantasy that's a little more condensed and isn't 1,000 books long, so I got the entire story over 2 books, and it was definitely a fun, fast read. If you want to hear more about it, I definitely recommend checking out my video review. As well, I received a copy of The Rage of Dragons by Evan Winter. This is an epic military fantasy that I received from Orbit Books as well as Hachette Canada, and this is one that I really enjoyed. At this point, this is my favorite 2019 fantasy release. I gave it a solid 4 stars. I do have a separate review if you want to check it out, but it follows a young man named Teo who goes on a revenge quest, and I love this one. It gave me Game of Thrones feels, which is a scary thing to compare any book to, but I honestly do think those comparisons are warranted, and I very much enjoyed it. I am definitely going to continue on with this series. I would love to see where it's going to go in the next book, and I just could not recommend this one enough. It is African inspired, so it has a nice diverse element to it with an own voices author, and I just cannot gush about this one enough, so go check out my review. Now to talk about fantasy that I purchased myself, I got a copy of The Prince of Thorns by Mark Lawrence. This is one I read years ago and really liked. It's one of the first fantasy books that I actually read, and I loved it because it is grimdark with a very, very dark, unlikable protagonist, and I just found it really easy to get into, very dark, very disturbing, and it just was my perfect place to start when it comes to fantasy. So I do recommend it to the right audience. Not everyone loves this book quite as much as I do, but personally I think it's a favorite. It's so much fun. As well, because of Jade from Bedtime Bookworm, Jason from Jason's Weird Reads, and Daniel Greene, all 3 of their channels have been gushing about this series for so long, I decided to pick up the first book in the Wheel of Time series, which I'm kind of regretting, and I'm also really excited for it at the same time. So the first book is called The Eye of the World by Robert Jordan. I don't know tons about the actual plot. I know it's a very long epic fantasy that has a hard magic system, and it's just supposed to be very accessible. I know it's getting made into a TV show, which I've heard great things about, and I just want to check it out for myself, especially before I try watching it. I don't know how this is gonna go. I would love to hear other people's opinions on if they think I'm gonna like it. If you haven't read it, maybe we could read it together. I am intimidated by this one just because of the length of the series. I've heard it's a little more classic in tone than the fantasy that I normally read, but I'm hopeful because I really, really like hard magic systems. So we'll see how I get along with this. I will keep you posted, and hopefully it is a winner. Speaking of hard magic systems, I also got a copy of The Black Prism by Brent. This is the first book in the Lightbringer series. I have already read this one prior to picking it up, but I enjoyed it enough that I did want my own copy. I am currently listening to the rest of the series on audio and really enjoying it. I'm very intrigued where it's gonna go, and I would like to do a series review because the last book is coming out in October, but this one is just a lot of fun. It is set in a world where people are able to manipulate different different colors, and the story starts out with a man who is a Black Prism because he has the ability to control all the different colors as well as actually bend light and create the colors himself. It's really cool, really fun, and I will definitely be talking about it more in a future video. Last fantasy to talk about is another chunker, and that is The Way of Kings by Brent and Sanderson. This is the first book in his epic series. I have not read it yet. I have read Sanderson before. I've read the Mistborn trilogy for the first era, as well as Warbreaker, and did enjoy those. So I wanted to pick up more Sanderson and was just in the mood for something epic. I have been really enjoying fantasy this year, so I'm really trying to push myself to try some more complex stories, but I'm a little bit intimidated. This is one that I got a used bookstore because I wanted to have my own copy, because a book that is really long like this and the Wheel of Time series, I don't want to feel rushed to return to the library. But this book is so chunky and I'm a little bit intimidated just how big it is. I'm like that I got the big trade paperback, but at the same time, I kind of picked up this book and I'm almost regretting this to begin with. So I'd love to hear your thoughts if you have read this series. I know it's not complete yet, but I would like to try it. And again, if people are interested in trying it with me, we can definitely see how that goes. But I'm excited and nervous all at the same time and would love your opinions on this one. Finally, I want to talk about something a little bit different. I don't usually talk about manga on my channel, but I do really enjoy it. And my husband and I went for our 8-year wedding anniversary over the summer, and we decided to go and wander into a comic book store after supper, and we found a copy of this box set, and we were both huge fans of the TV show, and we decided to splurge and use some anniversary money to buy some books, which I was really excited about. Usually my husband is super nice and gets me something like jewelry, but I really like the idea of buying a book series that we are going to read together, and that is the DBZ or Dragon Ball Z box set. I am so excited that we own this. This is crazy. There are 26 books in here, and we have started reading them together, which is really fun. We aren't reading them aloud, but rather reading them kind of side by side, usually trying to keep up with each other, so we're only a volume or two behind. And it's just really fun. I've mentioned before, my husband is not a huge reader, but he's really enjoying these manga, and it's just fun to be able to talk about them and kind of make it a husband-wife book club kind of thing. So very different than what I normally read, but a lot of fun. I won't bore you by reading all of the titles, but I would love to know if anyone else is a huge DBZ fan. I am a huge fan of the series, especially Vegeta. Of course, I love the dark and villainous characters, but Vegeta is my homeboy and I love him so much. So if you have read the manga or are just simply a fan of the TV show, I would love to know, because I just want to know that I'm not the only geeky one out there. So that is it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. As always, I would love to hear your thoughts down below on any of the books I talked about. Have I enticed you to pick something new up? As well, consider checking out my individual reviews if you want to hear my longer thoughts on the books that I've already read. Please consider like, commenting, or subscribing if you haven't already. It really helps me with those YouTube algorithms. And as always, I will talk to you again soon in another video. Okay, bye-bye.